Adam, Tar Heels, Miami, 41-31 the final score. Miami led at halftime, 17-14, and then Carolina goes on the defining run of the game, scoring the next 24 points of the game, 3 touchdowns in the third quarter, an early fourth quarter touchdown. At that point, the Heels go up by 21. Miami scores 2 late touchdowns to make you just nervous enough, but Carolina does enough to win it. They also sandwiched a field goal in between those 2 late Miami touchdowns. So 41-31 the final. Carolina moves to 6-0 overall, 3-0 in conference play. Miami now 4-2, and more importantly, I guess, 0-2 in ACC action. Adam, lots of good, some bad in here too. To me, the main event for this game from Carolina's perspective is that through the first half, it was, well, here it is. Here's the Tar Heels in this important game. And they weren't playing horribly, but they also weren't playing well. They weren't protecting Drake May particularly well. He looked hurried and inaccurate to an odd degree for him. He was getting hit around some. The Tar Heels were running the ball effectively, but didn't seem to feel confident to continue to run the ball. Too many mistakes. I mean, the penalties, it was like a waterfall of penalties the entire game.
On one side.
On one side, yes. The Tar Heels nearly had a school record in penalty yardage. The school record's 150 against Duke in 1947, and the Tar Heels finished with 147. And honestly, had Miami accepted a penalty that I think in hindsight they think they should have, the Tar Heels would have set a school record for penalty yards. So, Adam, self-inflicted wounds. Miami's good. You know, even right there at the end of the half, Carolina had been down 14-7, tied it up at 14, got a stop, got the ball back, and you thought, oh, okay, this is great. Carolina's getting the ball to start the second half too. The Heels are going to end the half with the ball, you know, maybe get in position, try a field goal. Obviously, you'd love to score a touchdown, but, you know, maybe get some points here. At worst, you're going to have the football at the end of the half, and then you get it right back in the second half. And instead, the Tar Heels go quickly 3 and out, leave Miami a minute plus left on the clock. Hurricanes go down, kick a field goal, and lead at 17-14 at halftime. And so, again, to me, Adam, that's where this whole game changed, and this team, at least for now, adds another chapter to the story that this team is different. Because they came out and they controlled the third quarter. They made adjustments. They changed some things. Started finding Tez Walker down the field. He scored a touchdown. Tar Heels get a turnover. Can't score after that one. You think, oh, gosh. So they punt it away, and then on the very next play, get another turnover. And they do score. Then they force a 3 and out, and they score again. And so all of a sudden, it just rolled downhill for Carolina. Led by 21 early in the fourth quarter. It wasn't over then, but certainly Carolina put itself in the dominant position where some wacky things were going to have to happen for them to lose, and ended up winning in their best win of the year by far by 10.
Felt like third quarter, that's the ceiling for this Carolina team, right? Like, you can't be much better than the Tar Heels were in that quarter in terms of doing basically everything right in exactly the way that you needed to do it, with multiple people contributing and doing it during that time. That being said, the first, second, and fourth quarter, I think, were not the ceiling for the Tar Heels, which in some ways is a little bit encouraging because Miami is good and Carolina was able to control the entire second half and beat a good team while not playing their full-on A game. But they did give you just enough of a tantalizing glimpse to see of what they could be, that if they would ever play 4 quarters of that, I think you feel like legitimately Carolina can step on the field with anybody. And to me, that's what you come away from this with. They could play with anybody. They could be that good. The problem is that when you get into this rarefied air where Carolina is now, there's no room for error at all. And so every single little mistake becomes magnified by 100. But that's something to worry about in the weeks to come. Not right now. Right now, it's just time to think about how awesome Saturday night was, how well the Tar Heels played, not just offensively, but defensively. Our boy Cedric Gray
played great.
Was all over the field.
I was very, very scared that Cedric Gray was hurt after he picked up that fumble.
That was the all-time ball don't lie fumble.
Yeah.
After it was a questionable roughing the passer call, Jones, in my eye.
Indeed.
And then they get help on another penalty, which that one was legit, hands to the face. And then drop the ball on the goal line. Like an inch before the goal line, Cedric Gray scoops it up. And I agree. When he laid down and felt for like his rib area or something, I thought this could be bad. But don't worry. He was able to come back and, just on his face, the catch he made on the interception that he had, that was a great catch.
Yeah, big-time play.
So, Miles Murphy, our other boy.
Yep.
We got so many boys on the football team now that we hang out over there with the little board all the time.
Yep, little board.
Miles Murphy, you fired him up, Jones.
Yeah, I think so. Miles Murphy had a fumble recovery. He was in the backfield a couple of times. Let me see if he got credited for half a sack in this game, Adam. I can't remember. I'm not sure he officially had a sack.
I think Bo Atkinson might have snuck in there and got it.
He had a tackle for loss, but not a sack. So I'm sure that's why he didn't point up to him.
Yeah.
He does like this, whatever that is. I've seen other people do it, so it's clearly I'm throwing my money all over the place. It's that kind of motion.
You're making it rain, Jones.
Yeah.
That's what Jones does after a good broadcast every time when he and Brian
Saturday
sign
night,
off.
I know that feeling. Okay, so I want to talk about the atmosphere in there eventually as well. But it was a couple individuals I want to talk about, Adam. First, Tez Walker. I mean, this was what everyone said Tez Walker could be. And the one touchdown, the second one that he scored, and you got to think about it when you're putting up 3 touchdowns in the game. You got to sit here and figure out which one you're talking about. The second one that he scored, Adam, which if I'm not mistaken was the 56-yarder, he legitimately, there was no fancy route. He just started running as fast as he could. The Miami guy could not run as fast as he did. Drake May dropped it, a beautiful pass right into his hands at the 10-yard line, and it was a touchdown. And he did other things, too. I mean, on his third touchdown, on that big 3rd and 20, caught it, stepped through a tackle, found his way around. I mean, but the ability just to run past people sometimes is helpful.
It was nice that I thought his touchdowns, and again, when you have that many, it's nice to be able to pick and choose, gave you a nice look at all the different ways that he is good and is a weapon for the offense. Like Jones talked about the second one, you just go and I'll throw you the ball. But then the third one,
James Franklin wouldn't like that, Adam.
Yeah, that's right. They don't do that at Penn State. The third one, they had an angle from behind the play thanks to the camera that hangs from the sky.
Sky cam.
The camera that hangs from the sky. They had an angle from behind where you could really appreciate when Drake May threw the ball, it wasn't there. But he knew where Tez Walker was going, and Tez Walker knew where to go, and Drake May knew exactly where to put it so that it would dissect this Miami group of defenders. And it was just perfect. It was just perfect. And to have a receiver able to do that and then not just make the catch and fall down, but just keep going and pick up a personal foul penalty that I really enjoyed on a specific Hurricane defender, he's just a weapon. And all that time we spent talking about, boy, it would be nice if he was part of this offense. Well, you saw why.
And as good as Tez Walker was, Adam, and I understand why he's the one who got all the attention after the game, I thought this was an enormous performance by Omarion Hampton. And he didn't have as many yards as he did against App State, but this was better. This was a better performance. I mean, and Brian and I talked about this in the postgame. This 197 yards. And Adam, so when you get the stats after the game, they show you for a rusher, for example, number of carries, yards gained, yards lost, and then the net rush yardage. Omarion Hampton, here, you can look at it right there if you're watching with us oh wait, I'm at that camera today. 197 yards gained, 0 yards lost. So 197 yards. Adam, against that defense, which came in leading the nation in rushing defense, no team had rushed for 100 yards. against Miami this season. Omarion Hampton rushes for 197 yards. Not once does he lose a yard on a run. He averaged better than 8 yards per carry. I felt like every time he touched the ball, something good happened. He also caught a touchdown in this game. First time this year, second time in his career he's done that. And Adam, it was the first play of so we were talking about the first half. I know in my head, and I'm guessing a lot of Tar Heel fans thought this too, like, why is Omarion Hampton not getting the ball more? Like, he's running really effectively. First play of the second half, Carolina gives it to Omarion Hampton. And he's got a good game, 4 or 5 yards. And then it just became the pile kept moving. And then the big boys came behind and started pushing the pile even more. And I think it ended up being a 12-yard gain or something. And while that one play didn't win the game, what I did think it did was say it was a visual representation of what the Tar Heels said they needed to happen in the second half, I'm guessing, which was they've been beating us up front. They've been tougher than you in the first half. You're hanging in there, but if you're going to win this game, your toughness level has to go up. And Carolina showed it on that play and then the entire second half.
Well, we talked about it last week that sometimes when Carolina loses these types of games, it's because it feels like they get out physicaled a little. And this time I thought Carolina did to Miami what some other teams have done to Carolina in the past. I thought Miami gave in a little bit because they just didn't want anymore.
Well, the great example was before the final touchdown of the third quarter, the one that ended up being the little pass in the flat to Omarion Hampton, where Carolina had just been, I mean, it was just boom, boom, just blow after blow after blow going down the field. And they get to goal to go at the one, and Miami takes a timeout. Like, they just had to stop it just to gather their thoughts. And then they still had 12 guys on the field coming out of the timeout that they called. That, to me, was...
Maybe that's why they called the timeout, James.
Yeah.
They'll never pick up on this. We're going to put 12 of you out there.
Yep. Adam, to me, that was... And again, Miami scored a couple touchdowns. I'm not saying they quit in the game, because they did not. But that moment told me, like, they've had enough of what Carolina's handing them right now offensively.
Well, and you don't get pushed up and down the field like they did by Carolina in the third quarter if it's not wearing on you some. Like, it's not that – look, we've seen plenty of quarters where the Tar Heels go down and score, and then the other team goes down and score, and then the Tar Heels score, and they're just going back and forth. This wasn't that. This was Carolina doing whatever it wanted on offense and then coming back and sacking the quarterback and making big plays and getting turnovers and then going and scoring again. It was a very one-sided portion of the game, which Carolina earned.
What a luxury for us to sit here and think Drake May didn't have a great game and he threw for 273 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He was a little less accurate. And this is the first time all year he's thrown for less than 70% completions in a game. I do think the pressure bothered him early, but he was much better in the second half, as the Tar Heels as a team were. And, Adam, whatever is happening in that halftime locker room has been a consistent positive for the Tar Heels. It has been every game. I mean, I'm going through my mind here trying to think if there's one I forgot or – I mean, I think every game Carolina's been better in the second half than it was in the first. And that's on both the coaches for being able to diagnose, get the plan, hey, this is what we need to adjust and change, and certainly on the players for being able to receive that coaching and advice and then put it into action. So it's been a very impressive first half of the year in that regard for Carolina.
Well, and Mac Brown said with you on Saturday night, he would like to do that from the start.
Right.
Because you may at some point get yourself in a hole that you can't get out of. But it's certainly better than the alternative, which is to get yourself in a hole and not be able to get out of it. Carolina's done a good job of figuring out what the other team is having success with, trying to take that away, but also figuring out what Carolina is having success with and just trying to pound that. And it quite obviously worked very well.
I want to go to defense in just a second, but I just want to mention Tom McGinnis, the new punter for Carolina. What a game to just be thrown into for your first college action. And, we learned officially before the game, although I think you probably could have had an idea that Ben Kiernan was going to be out for at least some time, and unfortunately it will be the rest of the year after that big blow against Syracuse last week. But, Adam, for Tom McGinnis, who was not a football player, he was a rugby guy, Australian rules football. I don't know if I think those two things might be different.
They are.
I think he was Australian rules football. Anyway, maybe we can get Tom Sheldon on here to explain. Or Tom McGinnis, for that matter. He had never punted in a game before. He elected to go to the Pro Kick Academy in Australia, where all these guys that you see within a lot in college football and pro football who are punters and kickers, but a lot of punters that they all go to. Carolina ends up offering a scholarship sight unseen to him, and he comes in. He earns the right to be the second punter behind Kiernan, who's, of course, an established player. And then when he's asked to come punt, his average ended up being 38.3, but that was also brought way down. He had that one at the end where he was purposefully trying to kick it short, and it was only like 24 yards or something, but that's what he was trying to do to pin Miami inside the 20, which he did. And it wasn't anything spectacular, but he went out there and didn't mess up, got the job done, and especially in your first action, that is what you need.
It wasn't anything spectacular, but it wasn't a disaster.
Yes.
Which is what it could have been, which could have decided the game. So he allowed Carolina to use other players to decide the game, which is where they had the advantage. Maybe they didn't have the advantage at punter, or maybe they secretly did.
Yeah.
And they've got the Australian cannon back there. So
TM. Go and TM that right now.
That's right. It really was nice to see, because the first time he received the deep snap, I got nervous.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, it's Tom McGinnis. We got this. No problem. What can I say? One other guy on offense?
Sure.
This is going to be weird. John Copenhaver.
Yeah.
The fact that he's like the fifth or sixth or seventh guy on the offense. There was this play in the third quarter where Drake May threw him the ball and he jumped over two guys and ran through another guy. And it was a moment where you're like, oh yeah, John Copenhaver. He's on the offense. He's really good. It gave you a little window into what it must be like to game plan for this offense, when like you're never going to game plan to take him away. But if you take away some of the others, you still got him.
Yeah.
The Carolina offense is pretty deep. Got a lot of weapons.
Well, and that was even with Elijah Green now going to redshirt after playing 4 games this year. So you've removed him. George Pettaway has done the same thing, and yet Carolina still has a lot of options. The injury to Kobe Paysour, a bummer. He has not been ruled out for the year, but it is expected to be several weeks before he's going to be able to return. So you've lost a couple guys. Getting Tez Walker back certainly helps with losing Paysour, but I do think some of that depth is going to be tested at some point, and whether that's somebody like Doc Chapman or Gavin Blackwell or whoever it might be, is going to need to make a big play or be in there at a big moment, and we'll have to see as the year goes on, because it is hard. I mean, you just lost your second leading receiver as far as number of catches in Kobe Paysour, and he's been probably your most consistent receiver up until this point of the year. You mentioned Copenhaver. I want to mention Kamari Morales just also, too, for the one play where he picked up Drake May got hit in the back on the goal line and fumbled it, and Morales was able to, and some of that's right place, right time, but he picked it up, got it out of the end zone, just a heads-up play by him in what could have been a disaster. I don't even think he had a catch in this game, but what a heads-up play for him.
Might not have a catch, but that play saved points.
Okay, now let me flip it over to the defense, Adam, for the Tar Heels. And, Miami was humming a little bit in the second quarter where there was a blown coverage that allowed Restrepo to get a touchdown. And then, I thought the touchdown that Van Dyke threw to make it 14-7 when Power Eccles hit him and he still laid it out across the field, perfectly into the hands of Jacoby George. Like, that was just a big-time throw. I don't think Carolina did anything wrong on the play. It was just a heck of a play by Van Dyke and by Miami's offense. Van Dyke loves seeing the Tar Heels, man. He plays well against Carolina, and I thought he played decently well, but he made that big mistake with the interception. And he fumbled as well, but that was more on the snap. The snap never really got off the ground. It was low. I'm not sure he was expecting it yet. That's the one that Myles Murphy recovered around midfield. The interception was bad, but I thought Van Dyke played well. Miami's speed and athleticism was evident, as we said it would be. They love throwing to Restrepo, and he's really good. He got targeted 17 times, I believe, in this game. I thought Elijah Huzzy, who didn't have him every single time but was guarding him a fair amount, I thought he did a decent job. Restrepo's going to get catches. He's too good of a player not to. But I thought both of those guys got some wins in that battle. And, Adam, I really feel like this is a game where you could just start naming everybody who played. Cedric Gray, we talked about. Kamen Rucker had 2.5 sacks on the game. Couple of big ones. One that forced Miami into a 3-and-out. One on Miami's final drive that really kind of ended any hope of them having, a wild finish, like a late touchdown. They'd have to touchdown, onside touchdown. I mean, it would have had to have been crazy. But kind of ended really any hope of that. And you just look up and down that defensive lineup. Marcus Allen, I thought, played well. He punched away some balls. I think he had either 2 or 3 passes broken up in this game. It was just a game where a lot of different guys contributed, but, man, particularly Gray and Rucker, who you would expect, the 2 leaders, I think, along with Power Echols on this defense, they really showed up in a big way.
Yeah, your best players played the best. And you got to keep in mind that if you're going to get where Carolina wants to go this year, you're going to have to play good teams who have good players who will have some success. I mean, they're going to throw touchdown passes like Van Dyke did. Where Carolina's gotten in trouble before is those good players throw the touchdown passes and then it snowballs and there's like Carolina just kind of curls up and they're like, oh, there's nothing we can do about this. This time they figured out what they could do about this and made enough plays to allow the offense to work. That's what we've been saying ever since last year, is that if Carolina's defense was ever just average to above average, the offense is plenty good enough. 40-plus points against an ACC opponent to start the year for the first time ever. 3 straight times.
Yeah.
So the offense is plenty good enough, just make some plays. And in the third quarter, the Tar Heels made all the plays, and in the other 3 quarters, they made enough plays to win the game and beat a good team. This is not a defense that's going to shut everybody out. But they're getting to where they can make enough plays to give you a chance.
I asked this question to Brian on the air on Saturday. How many times do you think Rucker actually gets held in the game?
Why doesn't anyone ever call holding on him? Like, I could walk up to him and grab him around the neck and throw him down, which I could easily do.
Sure, yes.
And that would still not be a penalty.
It was, Carolina got hammered with holding calls in this game. Multiple big plays called back. I haven't broken down the all 22 on that, Adam, to see if they were all good calls or not. I'm going to assume some of them were. But it didn't help the referees' calls in that regard, that on the play you talked about earlier where Jahvaree Ritzie kind of grazed the helmet of Tyler Van Dyke, that within the same shot of seeing that, you saw the Miami tackle just like grabbing and pulling down Kamen Rucker, which I think that wasn't the only time on the evening that occurred.
Well, and Mac Brown sort of made this point on Monday. If you're going to throw a lot of flags and call holding very tight, which I can understand if that's your outlook, let's do it both ways. And I'm not sure that was the case. But what did happen is the Tar Heels won, and perhaps the league office will review that footage and say, let's make some adjustments going forward. I'm sure they will.
Adam, let's talk about the environment in Kenan Stadium. We talked some on Friday about the new lights. I thought they made a difference. It just changes the feel in the stadium. And I know that might be silly to say that just by turning out the lights but I thought Carolina used the lights well. I'm sure they'll have feedback and thoughts after the first true night game that they could do everything that they had the capability of doing, and they may want to change something. I don't know. But It felt like it juiced up the pregame. The national anthem was awesome from the dude from The Voice, Britain, whatever.
Buchanan,
Sanford native. What up, Sanford? It just felt like a big game. I thought, of course, the number one reason why were the teams playing, but I thought Carolina's game day experience added to that.
Yeah, and we understand it was the perfect storm because it was a big game to debut these big lights, so everything felt bigger. But also, it was really cool. Ken Cleary, Ryan Schmidt, all the folks who have been involved in making that happen. As you said, national anthem, best one ever in Kenan.
It was good. It was up there.
You can't have the discussion without that one on there, James. The team introduction was better because of the lights. The going into the fourth quarter, which already was good, got even better. So I thought it made some things that weren't as good, and then it made the good things better, which is why you spend money on stuff like that. That's why you pay attention to things like game experience so that people can walk away going, that was cool. I'd like to be in the stadium to see that rather than watch it at home. You didn't get the full feel at home. If you were in Kenan, you know what we're talking about.
Adam, you were there watching the game, not doing anything per usual,
right.
Whereas I was working, of course.
Yep.
I mean, what was your feel? What was the takeaway of the energy? I mean, it seemed to me to be very loud and engaged.
Well, and I thought a surprising number of Miami fans, because I don't traditionally think of them as traveling well, but I thought they were loud and in their section, which always helps, because any crowd, and a Carolina football crowd, always gets angry when the other team shows up and starts cheering. And they're doing their little CANES with your nemesis, Sebastian the Ibis.
I saw Sebastian there.
That's why he stayed down on the field.
Yeah, he knew better.
Yeah. And so that fires up the Tar Heel crowd a little bit. The students were there early.
I know other people have said this. The Tar Heel student section has been a difference maker this year, and it's been consistent. And it's not just this year. I feel like it's been the last several years, but I'll just use this year. It's been consistent. They've been there early. They're loud. They're into it. They're having fun. I mean, I think that aids to the day.
It sets the tone for everyone else. And I think there's some times where they set the tone and no one else really goes with them. But in this case, it felt like everybody went with them. People were standing up cheering all over, not just in the student section, and just a great environment. Just a quick reminder for Tar Heels in Virginia, when Carolina has the ball, you don't need to cheer really loud if something happens that you like, because actually they want you to be quiet so they can snap the ball. Just a little pet peeve of mine that I had to admonish a couple people for on Saturday. But they couldn't hear me because they were on the other side of Kenan Stadium.
Sorry. Maybe they did hear you. Maybe you had like your full dad voice on.
Yeah, maybe I fixed it. But overall, just a fantastic crowd. I mean, that's what you want football at Carolina to be, is Saturday night.